What's up, y'all? Welcome into another edition of the DNVR Rams podcast presented by our friends at Branded Bills. Head to brandedbills.com. Use that code BBDNVR for 15% off of your first order. Hope everybody had a nice weekend and enjoyed the national championship game last night. The men's game a little bit more competitive than the women's, at least. But man, what a run from Michigan. One of the more dominant teams that I can recall. Just really kind of thumped everybody on their way to that national title. It was a fun NCAA tournament, not one of the super memorable ones. I feel like, I don't know, we ended up pretty chalky with Michigan, UConn in the end. But there were definitely some good games. I always love the beginning. It's always a lot of fun. Hope to see the Rams get back there next year. We've got a lot to dive into today. We're going to talk hoops here at the beginning. We will then talk a lot of football. We'll play some interview clips. I'll give some observations from the second scrimmage of the spring. I will play Jim Mora, Haas Haney, and hopefully Kenyon Aggers as well, as long as the tech works out for us. That's always a bit of a process trying to do these live shows. But I wanted to start here just with the news in case you guys missed it. Over the weekend, CSU landed a commitment from a JuCo All-American wide receiver, Jaivyn Moore, 6'3", 195-pound wide receiver out of Iowa Western. He had a lot of interest from Wyoming. Actually visited Laramie this past November. If you look at his 247 page, Wyoming is who he was predicted to land with. So kind of nice to swipe a guy that potentially was going to land with a rival. Also had offers from Marshall, Liberty, Nevada, among others. Had 18 Division I offers listed on 247. CSU actually not one of the teams listed on there. So a good reminder that recruiting process, when you're looking up these guys, it can be imperfect. The information's not always 100% correct. He's coming off of a nice year, though. 30 catches for 629 yards and 12 touchdowns. Again, already mentioned, but he was a JuCo All-American for a national championship winning Iowa Western team. I believe they're in that Jayhawk conference, which is one of the better JuCo football leagues in the country. He's a guy, when you look at him on huddle, who can make some plays vertically. I think you can get him involved in some quick screens and slants across the middle, crossers, stuff like that as well. He's got long speed. He's got a big, nice frame, can really move, and he gives the wide receiver room a little bit of size, which I feel like is needed. I've mentioned a couple of times that there may be a little small, little light out wide. I think they've got some speedsters. I think they've got some guys who can make some plays, but you looked across the board, and while you felt great about the tight end room, just kind of felt like you could use a guy with a 6'3" frame like Jaivyn Moore has. He's proven, so hopefully he can hit the ground running and find a way to contribute this season. Feels like it's been a while since the Rams have hit on one of those highly touted JuCo guys, but you have an opportunity here to come into a wide receiver room that's relatively unproven. You've got a couple of returners that have had some moments. Tommy Maher, Levon Brown has actually had a really nice spring. He's somebody who I could see potentially playing his way onto the field a little bit more as well. But nice to see CSU bringing some size into the room. And again, it's always a nice little win when you can land a player over a potential rival. Taylor in the Toyota chat says, do I think Cayenne goes to Minnesota? Cayenne Evans, the former CSU men's basketball guard who transferred to North Carolina, back in the portal. I was going to give some thoughts on Cayenne at the end, but I guess we can do it now. It doesn't really matter. I think that there's a good chance he lands at Minnesota. Certainly, it would make sense. I've heard that schools like Iowa and Nebraska have made pretty nice pushes at him. So I think he's going to have quite a bit of interest in the portal. He's definitely someone who has a far higher ceiling than what he showed with the Tar Heels. It was a bummer how that played out, because I felt like Cayenne at the end of 2025, really over the second half of the conference slate into the Mountain West tournament, which CSU obviously won, and then in the NCAA tournament where he was just a monster against Memphis, he was probably a top 10 player in the Mountain West at that point for the entirety of the season. Maybe you wouldn't have classified him as that guy, but at that point in time, I really don't think there were 10 players in the league playing better than him. And for it to go from that to him scoring 4 points a game at North Carolina, playing like 4 minutes in the NCAA tournament, it's just really a bummer how that played out. He averaged 17 minutes per game in the end, but those numbers are somewhat skewed because he started obviously at the beginning and then wasn't completely out of the rotation, but basically wasn't playing at the end of the season for them. Just the perfect example of the fit and why it matters so much, right? You don't fault the kid one bit. It's an opportunity to play for one of the biggest brands in the sport. They threw crazy money at him. I really think 99.9% of players in his position would have jumped at that opportunity and taken the offer. I don't fault him. I wasn't rooting against him. I take no joy in talking about this. This isn't see, that's what you get for leaving CSU type segment. Genuinely, I was bummed to see it play out the way that it did because I think Cayenne is a really talented player. He's a good kid. I enjoyed covering him when he was at CSU. Sure, you'd love to float the hypothetical of him returning to CSU. I don't think they're going to have the money for it, especially given who they were able to retain, and we're going to get into that. But I hope that wherever Cayenne lands, it's the right fit and that it works out for him because he's a guy who I think has NBA shooting potential, little undersized, only 6'2", but it was a bummer. And the fit really matters. And frankly, the grass isn't always greener, even if the cash up front is. Like, you don't fault the guy 1 second for taking that kind of life-changing money up front. But now you are in a position where you're in a prove-it year, right? You've got 1 year of college eligibility remaining, maybe 2 if we end up seeing some changes to the NCAA in the coming years, which feels like it's somewhat realistic. It could move to 5 years. So maybe he has 2 more years to prove his worth, to play and prove himself on a national level. But he is one of those guys where you look at him and think, what could have been? What might have happened had he come back to CSU, been given the keys to the car? You would have been the star of the team. You had a ton of support in Fort Collins. No, you would not have gotten $2 million, but you probably would have gotten close to $1 million. Maybe they could have actually gotten to $1 million if they had a realistic chance to hang on to him. And maybe he's in a position where he's getting paid this offseason, or maybe he's got pro potential at that point. And now you're in a tough spot where you are going to have to affirm that you have the talent and ability that you flashed early on in your career at CSU and frankly did not show on a bigger stage at UNC. So it's a bummer that it played out that way. You wish him well. I'll be very curious to see where he lands. Personally, I would say if I was given advice to Cayenne, go to Minnesota, go play for Nico, somebody who is going to put you in a position to succeed, who has proven that they're a good fit for you. Whereas, it's a little bit more of an unknown if you land at an Iowa or a Nebraska. Also places I feel like would be a good fit for his skill set. He's from Kansas City as well, so Midwest guy, like you could see that making a lot of sense for him and his family. Will be very interesting to see how that plays out, though. And it is always a great warning for what can go wrong for you in the portal. And I always, and I say this, tongue in cheek again, I take no joy in how this played out for Cayenne, but I do hope that those checks were paid up front, right? Because that was just not the experience that he envisioned, that North Carolina thought they would get when they paid for him. And it's a bummer, but it is what it is. One of those guys or girls, I suppose, who I think could be in a similar position. We'll be curious to see where she lands as Brooke Carlson. The sophomore guard started all 35 games for CSU women's basketball. It came out yesterday that she will be hitting the portal. Scored 12 points per game on the year. Played in every game for the Rams, but really was a monster down the stretch. She averaged 17 in the Mountain West tourney. Kind of carried CSU to the tournament, especially after Lexus Bargesser went down. I took it to another level in the tourney against Michigan State, scoring 26 and proving that she can get buckets like that against stiffer competition. Really was a monster day from her, but I had the feeling in the pit of my stomach, just with the way that played out, that it could be a Cayenne 2.0 scenario where she was so good in that NCAA tournament game that it gets her offers that CSU can't compete with. And that kind of seems to be the scenario. She was so impressive down the stretch. We'll be curious to see where she lands. I think she's got the ability to play at a higher level, certainly. But that's a really tough loss for CSU because they could have brought her and Froby both back. Froby will be coming back, which is good. You worried with how tight her and Carlson are with Brooke hitting the portal, if maybe she would have wanted to see what's out there as well. but a tough loss. I mean, it feels like, CSU, had they lost, I don't love comparing anybody to Isaiah Stevens, but like that type of foundational piece, the face of your franchise, if you will, the face of your program. So that's a tough one for Ryan Williams and co. They're already active in the portal. There's a girl from GCU. I'll tweet about it later that you should keep an eye on. We'll see what they're able to do. Williams has certainly had a nice track record in the portal. They've had like 5 of the last 6 Newcomer of the Year awards in the Mountain West. So I'm not concerned about the potential of going out and landing impactful players and filling some of those holes. It is just a bummer, given CSU could have been pretty dangerous. I feel like next year, had they been able to bring everybody back, went out in the portal, got a couple of key pieces to replace those seniors. But it is what it is, right? Like, this is the business today. It's not shocking given how strong she was down the stretch. We'll be very curious to see where Brooke Carlson lands, but definitely a tough situation for Ryan Williams and company. A major loss for CSU women's hoops, coming off of a really impressive run down the second half of that season and into the postseason. That team was a lot of fun to watch, and I'll always look back on them fondly for breaking the streak, right? Let's hope it's not another decade without the CSU women's team in the tournament. Far too long. We've got to hold ourselves to a higher standard than that. Flipping things back over to the men, I know we've been all over the place here a little bit, but all somewhat similar topics. The men's team is in a really good position retention-wise. If you've listened to the show, I've told you for like 3 weeks now what I was hearing and what I anticipated would happen. Everything that we said would play out has played out that way to this point. You hang on to Carrie Booth, Jace Butler, Rashawn Bemba, Kyle Jorgensen, and now Josh Pasquarelli and JoJo McIver have confirmed their returns as well. Docker Tedeschi, redshirt, who did not play this year, as well as Charlie Dortch will also be back, a walk-on. But you're losing Brandon Rechsteiner, which we knew was going to be the case. You're losing Nicola Japa, who basically wasn't in the rotation at the end of the season after having some nice moments. I feel like down the stretch in 2025 for that team brought an element of toughness that they were sometimes lacking. For whatever reason, just didn't really work out this year. I don't feel like we saw him make enough of a leap. Part of that probably stems from not getting a ton of playing time, but part of that's on him, behind the scenes, right? You got to do the right things to earn that playing time. Darnez Slater and John McConan are also leaving as well. Neither of those guys very surprising. You would have loved to have been able to hang on to Darnez just because he did flash a little bit in those stretches he got to play in the league slate. I also feel like he's somebody who could start for a lot of teams across the country, certainly Big Sky caliber programs. I think we see him probably drop down a level, and maybe it works out really well for him, like it did for, a guy like Isaiah Rivera a couple years ago or something like that. A good kid. All of those guys, good kids, and worked hard behind the scenes. It makes sense if you're Slater and McConan and you're looking for a bigger fit. It makes sense if you're Japa, who basically fell out of the rotation, to want to go somewhere where you're going to see the floor with more consistency. And Rec, while it is a bummer to lose somebody with his shooting capabilities, he's somebody who can really heat up for you, stretch the floor, had some really big performances in that winning streak at the end of the year. I don't think you could run it back with both him and Pasquarelli. And when you're trying to build a roster, it's a balance, right? You can't just have everybody that you'd love to have back, especially when they're going to command a pretty penny in the portal like Rec is. There will be a high major that throws a check his way to provide shooting in either a 6-man type role or just somebody, who can be that spark guy at the 2 guard. I don't think he's a point guard, especially at the high major level. And if you're CSU, it just feels like value-wise, you can probably get Pasquarelli back with a better bang for your buck. You obviously need him to be the guy he was in the non-conference slate, and the same goes for Jorgensen. I'll talk about that in just a second. But I think offensively, they can provide similar roles for you, and you can probably get more for your money bringing back, the combo of Pasquarelli and the forwards than paying out the wazoo to try to hang on to Rechsteiner and then maybe potentially losing a couple of other guys because of that, right? Like, he's not he's not somebody that I think is irreplaceable. He had a really nice season. I would have loved to have seen him come back. I felt like it was a nice fit, but he's not a true point guard. You've got a lot of guys in that 2-3 range, and you might add another one depending on what happens. But I think for Rechsteiner, it makes sense to try and maximize the amount of money you're going to get this last year of college basketball. He's not an NBA player. He's somebody that's probably going to be in wrestling at some point down the line, or maybe he plays in Europe for a while. And if you're CSU, I think you can offset what was lost. You can make up for it in the aggregate, and I think you can potentially go out and find yourself a better fit at point guard potentially, or again, maybe you just go with like a wing who provides some ball handling capabilities like we saw from Jaivyn this past year. I think Amando Miller can be that type of guy for you, but I'd love to see another wing, and I know CSU is looking at some of those guys. We'll keep this conversation rolling. I'll give a couple more thoughts on the roster, what I like about it, what the potential needs are, and then we'll get into football. Let me shout out a couple of our awesome partners real quick. All right, summer's coming up. Maybe you're going to hit the hiking trails. Maybe you're going to play a bunch of golf. Whatever you're into, Branded Bills has a hat for you. If you need snapbacks, truckers, fitteds, beanies, or tees, Branded Bills has you covered when it comes to performance and style. If you're looking for gear to make your brand stand apart from the crowd, look no further than Branded Bills. They have the best custom headwear. Start your order. Their dedicated team will help you create the exact custom apparel that you need. I've got a couple of different Branded Bills hats, as you can see in the background there. I've got the black CSU cap. I've got a camo one that I rock all the time, as well as a cool kind of gold alternate hat. Never had really seen a gold option, so I love that they had that out there. They've got a partnership with CSU as part of their on-campus collection. You see all kinds of students. Coaches frequently have been rocking Branded Bills of late. My guy Brian Roth, who I'll have on the show on Thursday. Head to brandedbills.com. Use that code BBDNVR for 15% off of your first order. I also want to talk to you about Toyota, the official vehicle of DNVR. Trucks have always been a part of their DNA for generations. Toyota has built durable legends destined for greatness and perfect for Colorado. Whether you're conquering off-road trails or hauling the weight of the world, there's a Toyota truck that's just right for you. Check out the Tacoma. Check out the Land Cruiser. They've got 17 models with available all-wheel drive or four-wheel drive, like the Epic 4Runner. Toyota also offers more low and zero-emission vehicles combined than any other automaker to give customers numerous choices to reduce their carbon footprint. 16 different hybrid vehicles to choose from, like the Tundra iForce Max hybrid truck, and not to be outdone, Toyota SUVs take command on the road and on the trail, so you can explore the road less traveled without having to sacrifice smooth city rides in SUVs like the RAV4 and Grand Highlander. You can hit up Cap Hill. You can cruise around the city. You can go west on I-70 and visit the slope, or go skiing in the mountains. Whatever you're looking for, Toyota is going to have an option for you. They're a proud partner of CSU Athletics and the official vehicle of DNVR. Toyota, let's go places. All right, great to see some folks in the Toyota chat. Shout out to Tyler. Shout out to my guy Kyle, who says, love that CSU kept most of its core group. Should be an exciting start to the Pac-12 era. I am with you. I think retention is really the best bet for a program like CSU. And the funny thing is, my buddy recently made this point to me, and I don't know if he wants to be shouted out specifically, so I'll keep his name off the record, but we were just kind of going back and forth talking about the roster. And I think in the portal era, it's easy to forget that retention and internal development has always been the most sustainable path for success. Like, with so many guys moving year to year, it has gotten really wonky, but I also think it's created this idea that players are who they are for their entire career. And if you only see a guy for 1 year, it makes sense why you'd believe that, right? That's the only version of that player that you got to see. But when you look back historically, guys like David Roddy, even Nick Clifford in year 2 at CSU was a completely different player than the guy who left CU. David Roddy in year 3 was not freshman David Roddy. Sustainability and development go hand in hand, and it's always been true for CSU. You look at the best teams in history, it's been groups of guys who grow together, have some highs and lows, show you the potential is there, and then they really break through that following season. I think you can look at Most recently, even, Neek, if you want to look at an individual, but even that team from year 1 to year 2, Cartier, some of those guys, obviously they added pieces like Joel Scott, but they were so much better in that second season. You look back to that 2021 campaign where you win 20 games, end up just shy of making the tournament. It really feels like that game against Cada and Utah State in the Mountain West tournament was basically a play-in game for CSU and Utah State. You fall short. You're one of the teams just left out of the field, but you go on a run in the NIT. The next year, you win 25 games. You earn a 6th seed in the NCAA tournament. In 2010, 2011, under Tim Miles, when that whole run began, you win 19 games. You don't make the tournament, but you have some really fun moments in conference play. You go toe-to-toe with some of those programs who were the faces of the league at the time. New Mexico, UNLV was still something to be messed with back then. But then the next year you win 20, and the year after that, you win 26 games, a program record, and you beat Missouri in the NCAA tournament. But those teams, had an opportunity to grow together, to experience highs and lows, and also to grow individually, which I think we can kind of just lose track of in the portal. And I know it's easy to look elsewhere and think the grass might be greener, or just assume that you're going to be able to go out and find a better option, but that really rarely is the case. And honestly, CSU hitting on as many transfers as they did this past season, that's kind of an anomaly. Like it's tough to hit on that many guys in one cycle. And especially if you're trying to do that year after year, bring in 6, 7 transfers at a time, it's just very likely not going to be a very sustainable approach for you. The consistency just isn't going to be there, especially in this system. This isn't an offensive scheme that you can just walk into and hit the ground running. For the bigs particularly, it's something that takes time, and that's why I'm really excited that you hang on to KJ, Booth, and Bemba, because I think you're just starting at such a better position than you were last year. And, for the guards too, like it's not something that you can just hit the ground running. And I think we underestimate how long that process takes for a team to come together, to establish some sort of continuity and rhythm and routine. And obviously injuries are going to impact you. Like that team was rolling in the non-conference slate, and then Jorgensen gets hurt, and then Pasquarelli gets hurt, and he kind of was dealing with some injuries throughout the entirety of the league slate. Misses a couple weeks before the tournament, just never really was the same guy that he was in November and December. If you can get those guys back to that place that they were and have shown that they're capable of playing at, you feel really good about the state of this roster. And frankly, I just think realistically, you're not going to find better fits for a lot of these roles than the guys you already had in-house. They might be out there in the portal, but you certainly probably wouldn't be able to afford them. And I just think you can't underestimate the value of the right fit, having the right guys who have proven that they're going to do the right things and work hard and stuff. Like that's the other thing about the portal. It's kind of a guessing game as far as what you're getting. You can watch somebody and see their clips online and be able to get somewhat of an idea of the type of player they are, what their skill level is at. I still think seeing them in person is really how you gauge that more accurately, but you have no idea the type of person that they are, what their work habits are like. What are they like behind the scenes? Are they a locker room cancer? Or are they somebody who helps you, raise the floor of the team and bring guys together? And I feel like they got a lot of guys who came in hungry, but were also great teammates last year. And I just will always put a value and an emphasis on having talent, sure, but the right types of guys in your program, because it can go south in a hurry. There are a lot of talented players out there who frankly are more detrimental with what they bring attitude-wise than what they contribute skill-wise or production-wise. They might score 20 points a game, but they also might be the reason that your entire team wants out of there. And these are the things that we don't necessarily get to see day to day. And just from what I saw, behind the scenes, going to practices, stuff like that, they've got a really good group. And clearly too, when you look at the leap that Jace Butler, that Kerry Booth were able to make, when you look at what Kyle Jorgensen looked like pre-injury, but how hot he was out of the gate, compared to what he was last year, there's a proven track record of development under Ali Farokhmanesh and Niko Medved, this era kind of ties together, in my opinion. But I think retention was the best bet for CSU, and I felt good about the potential of it. But I give this staff a lot of credit for actually pulling it off. And I give these players across the board a ton of praise for being mature enough and understanding the value of being in the right system, because it's just easy to get lost in the sauce, to get caught up in the light, however you want to phrase it, to start looking elsewhere and thinking, maybe I should be playing for this bigger school, or I'm so much more deserving of all this money. And it's not like any of these guys are going to be poorly compensated. I want that to be clear as well. They don't have North Carolina money, but they also are not poor, especially compared to schools and programs of comparable size. Like CSU is in a pretty good spot. There's been far more investment from the boosters and donors into hoops these last couple of years after having this success. But now the key is being able to sustain it and prove that post Medved, you can continue this ascension and continue to climb and try and raise the brand even more, right? I think you have made a leap in the last decade in terms of how you're viewed nationally. I think you're on par, with those Boise States, Utah States, St. Mary's type programs where you get a lot of respect and your brand is known. You're going to play, games against big competition. You'll be on national TV at times. You can send guys to the NBA. It's not surprising when you make the tournament, but you want to try and reach that next level, right? Like, you're not going to be Gonzaga. Can you be San Diego State, though? Can you be a program where year after year, it's a surprise if you don't make the tournament, and the standard is you make it, and the hope is that you make the second weekend? Like, that's kind of that next level. It takes time. I've said this a million times with San Diego State under Steve Fisher. Go look at the first 6-7 years. It isn't what it was over the second half of his tenure. And then, Dutcher, who's kind of the Ali in their scenario, the right-hand man who takes over. That process took time. And even after Dutcher took over, it wasn't all roses those first couple of seasons. They had some struggles. They had to win the Mountain West tournament one year to sneak in. And then they just go crazy and, have the 30 in 1 year with Malachi Flynn, and the year after that, or 2 years after that, whatever it was, they go on the run to the national championship. Like, they've had some really impressive stretches here, but it was a process that took time, and you just have to continue chipping away. And I think CSU has done a good job of doing that in recent years, but there will be higher expectations next season. Last year, I think more or less you accomplished what you should have. There were some games that got away with you. You also won a couple of games that you probably realistically shouldn't have been expected to win, like New Mexico in the pit. Even San Diego State at home in year one, you're not going in anticipating that's going to happen. Now next year, you got to find that consistency. You've got to avoid some of those landmine losses you had in the non-conference slate that really held you back. And hopefully you can continue to see the guys grow like we did this past year. If Jace Butler, if Kerry Booth can continue, building off of what they showed, even a guy like JoJo McIver, which I know is going to be a big question for CSU. Do you feel confident enough rolling into the year with him as your point guard one? I am not giving up my JoJo stock. I know he had a tough year offensively. There were some moments where he really looked young. It's also important to remember he was a freshman. He is going to make a leap. I think defensively, he's already going to be one of the better guys on the team. If he can stay out of foul trouble, that is one thing he'll have to adjust. But the ability is there. Athletically, he's got a great frame. He's quick. He's strong. I just need to see him, shoot the ball with better consistency, because I even think some of the playmaking started to show itself down the stretch. But I would really like to see CSU bring in a veteran point guard if possible. That would be my number one need. If I could, pick any role to bring in and fill, that would be it. I think realistically, you're looking at either a veteran point guard in the portal or some type of wing. I know they're looking at a couple of different guys right now. We'll see what happens with that. I don't think you're in a bad spot if you roll into the year with JoJo as your point guard, and then you have guys like Butler and Amando who are capable of facilitating some things for you offensively. I think Amando is going to be very similar to the Jaivyn Mooney's role we saw this past year, but he's a little bit bigger, a little bit more athletic, probably a little bit stronger pull-up J. I like where they're at. You're just vulnerable to volatility if you have issues at that point guard role in this system. You need somebody who can facilitate, but also somebody who can create good looks for themselves when things break down late in the shot clock. You've had Neek, you've had Roddy, you've had Zay, you've had all these guys. That was kind of the one element it felt like they were lacking at times in those tight games this past year. I think JoJo will make a leap. The question is, how big of a leap can he make? And how comfortable are you, really betting on him to do it in his second year? I also think there's a real chance we see some of these freshmen play. I mean, Pops Duncan is somebody who was scoring, 20 plus points a game in the playoffs, won a state title. Wouldn't be surprising at all if we saw him play early on, like we did with Cayenne, like we did with JoJo, like we did with Zay. They're not afraid to play guys. It's also possible if you bring a veteran point guard that maybe you redshirt Pops, and then we see guys like Fiedler or Goroshi potentially, play in that wing role. They've got good size, 6'8", 6'9". I think both those guys could see the floor for you potentially. Both certainly pass the eye test athletically from what I've seen out of them. It'll be way different. The game's just so much faster. You're going up against so much bigger, stronger dudes than you are, especially in Colorado high school basketball. But I really like the foundation of this roster going into year 2 under Ali. I think it'll be interesting to see what they do from here. But overall, this is about as good of an offseason as you could have realistically expected to have. And we're just getting started. Like, the portal's just opening up for the D1 guys. So it's going to be really fun to see where they go from here. Let me take a quick breather real quick. We'll get into the football talk. I'll play some of those clips for you. Let me shout out our partners. Make your chicken finger dreams come true at Raising Cane's, where every box combo is filled with craveable hand-battered and cooked-to-order chicken fingers. Every crinkle-cut fry comes from grade A premium potatoes. Each thick sliced Texas toast is lightly brushed with Cane's garlic butter blend and grilled on the griddle to golden brown perfection. Most importantly, the secret recipe Cane sauce is made in restaurant every single day. Get your box combo today. Make your craveable dreams a reality. Raising Cane's chicken fingers. One love. Y'all know the moment when you realize you left your favorite sunglasses at the beach or on the roof of your car, or at a gas station or a baseball field or wherever it may be. I've been there too. I've lost more sunglasses than I can count over the years between umpire and baseball and stuff like that. But I don't have to worry about that anymore. I don't have to worry if I leave it on the plane. I don't have to worry if I leave it at the hotel in Vegas for the Mountain West tournament, because Shady Rays has my back. They've changed the game. These sunglasses are already made for real life. They're seriously good looking. They're polarized. They're durable and not stupidly expensive, which I love. So many sunglasses these days, it's just out of pocket what they're trying to charge. Here's the wild part. If you lose or break them, even on day one, you could lose them the same day. Doesn't matter. Shady Rays will send you a brand new pair. No guilt trip, just replacements. Now I actually wear my sunglasses without fear. I can wear them in the pool. I'm not sweating it. I can wear it when I'm wrestling my dog. If he steps on them, it's all good. Shady Rays will have my back. Go to shadyrays.com. Use that code DNVRSR for 40% off 2 pairs of polarized sunglasses. Again, go to shadyrays.com. Use that code DNVRSR for 40% off of 2 pairs of sunglasses. All right, cool. If you're watching live on YouTube and you wouldn't mind hitting us with a thumbs up, I certainly would appreciate it. If you're listening later on via Spotify, Apple, wherever you get your podcasts, you wouldn't mind leaving a nice review, I would appreciate that as well. If you've got any questions, comments, fire them my way in the Toyota chat. If I don't get to them right away, I promise I will do my best to get to them at the end of the show. But just kind of putting a bow on CSU hoops before we branch into football for the second half of the show. CSU is retaining 6 of its 9 leading players in terms of minutes. Only 8 of those guys had eligibility, and frankly, I don't really think you wanted Augie back. So of the guys you realistically would have wanted to potentially come back, you kept 6 of the 7. You feel really good about that. You're going to be at such a different starting point this summer from where they were at last June, where you're basically starting from ground zero. It just gives you such a huge advantage. I do love that Bemba is coming back. He's a valuable asset. I know he's had issues staying on the floor at times. His health will always be kind of a question mark. But when he is able to play 20 minutes for you, the stats prove it. The Rams win a hell of a lot more than when they lose. Again, I am really high on JoJo McIver's ceiling. I think he's going to make a pretty big leap. And I think the Rams are going to have pretty good length top to bottom, especially if you add another wing in there. No, you don't have like a true 7-footer, but you're basically going to have an entire roster that's in that 6'3" to 6'10", 6'11" range. Like, you're not going to be a small team. I feel good about it. Does feel like point guard or wing are potentially the avenues you explore. You're not going to add another big. I know you're losing Japa, but you don't have any minutes to promise, so it's basically a waste of time unless you're able to find somebody who's cool with basically punting on a year. Maybe if they have redshirt eligibility remaining, you could find somebody who would be into it. But I think wing and or veteran facilitator are kind of those spots that you should keep an eye on. We'll be very curious to see where CSU goes. And then, how quickly can Amando Miller translate? I think he's going to be a really solid fit, but again, you're just playing better defenses, more consistent teams with plus athletes than you were at the D2 range. I like his game a lot, though. I think he can do a little bit of everything. He's got a really nice pull-up J, good passer, can score from all three levels, and then, develop physically. That's such a big advantage compared to, bringing in some of these kids at 18, 19 years old, when you're 24, when you've been lifting in a college program for a half decade. Obviously you're going to be at an advantage physically. And I think adding a player of his capability is huge for just raising the floor of this team. What can he be? We shall see. Can you be somewhere in the impact of I feel like Joel Scott, like if you can contribute the way he did, that'd be the best case scenario. But even if they're like a Chandler Jacobs type guy, spark plug off the bench or something like that, I would be pretty surprised if Amando does not translate well. But how quickly can he get it going? That'll be the question. Joel Scott was much better in the second half of the season than he was in the first. Cartier was definitely better in year 2 than year 1, but you're only going to have year 1. So how quickly does he hit the ground running? Who out of these freshmen play probably depends somewhat on where else you fill gaps in the portal. And also it's important to remember that Ali has already gone on record. I believe it was with Steve Ivey, so I hope I'm attributing that correctly. It might have been on Brady as well. They're probably going to keep a Scully or two open and keep some flexibility there. You don't need 15 scholarship players, just being real. You don't. There's not that much playing time. That's all I've got on hoops. Again, really credit the staff for being able to hang on to this core. I think it was by far this team's best bet for going into the Pac-12 era and being competitive. I really like where they are at, and I'm really interested to see where they go. I was at football this past weekend. They held their second scrimmage of the spring. Second time we've had a chance to see them go live. I've explained this a couple of times now, but I think people envision an NFL preseason game when they think of these scrimmages. It's not like a 4-quarter game where you're keeping score and stuff like that. It's more of an opportunity to go live 11 on 11, best on best in certain scenarios, right? You work on the 2-minute drill, you work on red zone, you work on 3rd and long, you work on 3rd and short. You also just, give them the ball and see if they can drive the length of the field a couple of times. So there are instances where it does feel close to a preseason game or a game-like setting, but it's somewhat imperfect, and they also take time to branch off into individual position groups and give feedback and give goals for the next portion. You'll see if you're there on Saturday, because it will be the final of these spring scrimmages. The big question, obviously, this whole spring has been who's going to win this quarterback competition. And I know that fans are antsy to get that sorted out. Is it going to be Haas Haney? Is it going to be Kason Farrar? The staff has shown some love to Darius Curry, but I don't think he's going to realistically push for, 1 or 2 on the depth chart, though you never know. You never know. I want to be clear about that. But Mora made it pretty clear that he's in no rush. We'll play a clip that shows that. I think both of these quarterbacks at times have flashed. I think athletically, for either of them, they're in a good spot. I will say Haas is more of a true dual threat, but as we saw on Saturday, Farrar can take off and go too. The seas kind of parted for him open wide, and he just took off, ran for like a 60-yard touchdown. I always take all successful quarterback rushes with a grain of salt in practice settings, because what's the defense supposed to do? It's not like they can blow him up or something like that. But I think both of those guys have the ability to burn you with their legs. both throw a nice ball. Farrar's a little bit bigger, maybe a little bit more comfortable in the pocket. Can you do it with consistency, though? I think the offense has started slow in both of these spring scrimmages. So while they've had nice moments, and in 2-minute and red zone in particular, I felt like both those guys looked pretty good. But they've had some slow starts. It's been a little bit inconsistent at times. That makes sense at this stage of the process. But again, it's also why there's no real rush to name one of these guys starters. Both of these quarterbacks bring something to the table that you like. Competing will only bring the fire out of them. And you have time to work through this stuff and to assure that both guys are developing by getting reps. Like, yes, there's an argument to be made that by the time week 1 rolls around, you'd like to have your quarterback ideally set in stone, although anything can happen over the course of the season, as we know. And ideally, like in season, the guy that's going to be out there is who's getting the majority of the reps with your ones. At this stage of the process, it doesn't need to be that. And I think that's part of the issue these past couple of years is you never really had the quarterbacks being pushed. And that is one of the things that Mora said that I think CSU fans are going to enjoy. He wants to see some failure out there. If the quarterbacks are killing it every day, they're probably not being pushed hard enough. And that is what Jim Mora had to say. So here is him talking about how the QBs executed. He liked some of it, didn't like some of it, as well as his thoughts on the value of going good on good in practice. You said last week you wanted to see more consistency moving forward from the quarterbacks. That's kind of the goal here. What have you seen from those guys over the last week?
I've seen more consistency. I have. Not enough consistency, but more consistency. And that's how it should work. You know, the more you practice, the more you detail things out, the more you're in competitive situations, the more you embrace hard things, then the better you're going to be. And the more familiar you become with an offense and with the receivers and protection, you know, trusting your protection, then the more consistent you should become. And we've got good players that work hard, and so they are becoming more consistent. But I'm always going to tell you, it ain't good enough yet. It's just not good enough yet, but they're working towards it.
Did you like the execution from the quarterbacks today?
Sometimes. Sometimes, and sometimes I didn't, you know. But that's practice. That's why we practice things, is so that we can create learning environments, you know. If everything's perfect all the time, you're probably not pushing hard enough. You're probably not challenging them enough. And so, you know, I don't want an environment where perfect practice is perfect. I want it to be hard. I want there to be chaos, confusion, game-like situations where you have to learn from series to series, down to down. That's what we want, and that's what we try to create.
You do a lot of good on good.
We do all good on good.
Yeah, exactly. Is that part of what you're saying right there? Of like, you got to make it feel like a real game.
You have to. You know, Kobe said it. Michael Jordan said it. Jerry Rice said it. Practice has to be harder than games. You have to create environments in practice that are more stressful mentally, emotionally, physically than games. And then you go out and you play on Saturdays with more of a freedom, and you can just go. So that's what we believe in, and that's what we're going to embrace.
Love it. Anytime you can reference Kobe, MJ, and Jerry Rice to emphasize the point you're trying to make, that's going to hold a little bit of weight. But they have been working hard, and it has been a different vibe. That's not to say that they were lollygagging in previous years, but they're certainly practicing longer with more pace. I think the sense of urgency has been apparent this spring that maybe was not quite there these last couple of years. And they probably got a little too content, a little too complacent, given where CSU was at, you know, coming off of that 5-win year in 2023. I just kind of feel like they thought they were in a good spot. Maybe they could have been, and it just didn't work out. But they're pushing these guys, and that includes the quarterbacks. Both have had times where they've shined. Both were able to hit vertical shots over the top of, 45 plus yards. These are unofficial stats. Obviously, me just taking observations with my little notebook. Both had 60-yard rushing touchdowns, roughly. Both in red zone through dimes in between corner and safety to convert on throws of 15 or more yards. I like to see the touch in a tight space on the field. That was encouraging. Both these guys really do throw nice balls. They're able to put some zip on them. I think the footwork is there. I like how these guys deliver. I want to see, can one of these guys come out and really kind of take the reins, show some consistency from the beginning. Right now, it feels like they flash the potential, And unsurprisingly, as young quarterbacks, both these guys have only started one game apiece in their career. They also have moments where the offense is struggling a little bit, and I think that's going to happen at this stage of the year. But there's really no rush, and that's what Jim Mora had to say. So this was Jim Mora when he was asked by Sean Keeler, what does a quarterback need to do to kind of separate himself from the other?
Well, first of all, we're a long ways from making that decision. A long ways from making. I mean, we don't have to make that decision until kickoff before the first game. But I would say that the key word is consistency. Okay, can he operate in our offense with consistency? Can he take care of the football? Can he make great decisions with the football in his hand? You know, not maybe throwing it away. At times that may be taking a sack. Okay, that may be running and getting out of bounds. Is he going to slide and protect himself? Is he going to be able to operate down to down and move us down the field and get us in scoring position and do all of those things on a consistent basis that we can count on as a staff?
Do you see the offense becoming aligned with what Price is trying to teach them, trying to create?
Yeah, slowly. I mean, we're a million miles away, and we should be.
Yeah.
You know, it's a new offense, it's a new staff, it's a whole bunch of new players. But after 9 practices, it would be inaccurate for me to say that there's not been progress. There has been progress. That's encouraging, but nobody here is satisfied with it, and you know we probably never will be.
I like how much of a straight shooter Jim Mora has been this spring. There's not been a ton of cliches, not a lot of sugarcoating it. He's been pretty real with his assessments of the team, what he likes, when he doesn't like things. He's been willing to go on record and say that as well. That's a coach who's very sure of himself and is not in his feelings over, you know, every little thing that the media are trying to ask him. I appreciate that. We're going to play some interviews of of Haas Haney and of Kenyon Aggers, so I can give you a little bit of perspective from the offense and defensive side. Kenyon Aggers is somebody I think he can be an all-conference type defensive player of the year type. He's got an NFL body. He is a freak athlete. Just got to put it together in that jack role this year. Him, Antoine Turner, Diamande, they've got some serious size and athleticism between the backers and that jack role. Just a couple of scrimmage notes before we play that interview with Haas Haney. I mentioned it a couple of times, but both quarterbacks had explosive runs, both hit in the red zone. As far as some guys that made plays out wide, we saw Farrar hit Mosley, the Mississippi State transfer, for about a 50-yard touchdown. It looked like kind of just a post, but again, I mean, I only saw it once. Not like I had a chance to go back and review it. Farrar had the big rushing touchdown. Haney hit Vic for about a 55-yard shot over the top. Love to see that. Mel Brown broke a 20-yard touchdown in the red zone setting. Just nice little screen, made a couple of guys miss. Terrence Smith Jr. had another 20-yard touchdown after scoring a couple of times the week before. UConn transfer has looked good. And then a fade to Mosley in the corner. I believe Haney threw that ball was probably the highlight of the day for me. Just really great touch, dropped it in a bucket between 2 defenders. Really, really nice touch on that ball. And good to see some of those veteran receivers making plays. I thought this was the best and most consistent that Vic and Mosley had looked, and that's encouraging at this stage of the process. But here is Haas Haney, who was fun in this interview. I think he was trying to avoid saying, I'm going to work my ass off, but then he just kept saying, work my nuts off, and you could tell he was getting embarrassed. It was, I appreciate it, honestly. Like it was an instance of a quarterback not being a robot. And I think, you know, showing your true self is kind of how you endear yourself to teammates and the community alike. So here's Haas Haney answering a couple of questions from the media.
Perspective, as you all as an offense trying to learn what Price is trying to get accomplished, what's the progress you think you've seen most? Is it in expectations and how you do things, or just an understanding of what his concepts are?
Yeah, first you got to set the standard on what the expectations are, which is, you know, bust your butt every play, no matter the outcome, and go full speed and, you know, do your job. And if you do your job and everybody else does their job, the execution is going to be there. It's really just set the standard on what we expect from the players, and then you get a certain amount of reps over time, then things are going to start clicking and the whole offense is going to start firing on all cylinders. And we're almost there. We still got a lot to work on, but I've been pleased with what we've been able to do.
As a quarterback, how important is it for you to kind of have an understanding of DePrice's thinking so that you can execute what he wants?
I mean, let's say it's 4th and 3, you got to know what he's thinking on any given play call. So, you know, you got to be super in tune with the play caller in terms of what he wants to execute on a given down. So, I mean, you got to know all 10 other guys' jobs on each play to be able to execute at a high level and have a super high level understanding. So it's super important.
Had a couple of chances now to go live. Just how do you feel like your execution has been?
It's not been bad. I mean, I got to watch the tape after today. I mean, we kind of started off slow today. We can't start off slow. We've been doing a good job starting off faster in practice, and then we've really been just talking about finishing practice. And today we started off slow, and then we finished practice better in 2 minutes. But you know, I feel like we've done well in live periods when they've had to tackle our running backs. We got a lot of good running backs, a lot of playmakers on the outside. So, you know, when they have to tackle us, we do pretty good.
Do you feel like you're starting to establish a rapport with those guys out wide?
I think so. I mean, like any school, you get 60 new transfers into the building. You have to, you know, build a relationship with them pretty fast. So I think over the past 3 or 4 months, we've done a good job at building a relationship and chemistry with those guys.
How do you do that? Do you take them out to golf, or do you take them out to shoot deer, or what do you do?
I mean, there's no, honestly, this is my 3rd program. We don't have a lot of free time outside of the building, which is good. It's all ball. So, you know, a lot of our connectivity comes in our Aggie talks that we have on Wednesday nights, and you know, we get some deeper talks. We talk about deeper topics, and it gives us a chance to know our whys and, you know, where we come from and what's important to us. So you can kind of get to know a person on a, you know, the same level. But yeah, we can hang out and go to eat and go to lunch and stuff like that.
Where do you feel the biggest growth in the offense has been over the 3 weeks of spring ball?
Shoot, that's a good question. I would just say everybody's execution in terms of formation, getting lined up faster, making sure receivers are on and off the ball on the same page, and, you know, the little details that people don't really focus on that we're doing a good job of, whether that's crack blocking safety versus man coverage, things like that.
How would you say your communication with your receivers has improved?
So, you know, as you've gone throughout the past 3 weeks of spring ball, you kind of figure out what receivers like, or, you know, where they want the ball on a go ball, whether it's a back shoulder, they want it over the shoulder, up top. Just getting a feel for what I like and what I want to see from them and what they want to see from me in terms of what kind of ball they want me to throw. So just getting on the same page and, you know, communicating. Yeah.
How much are those? Go ahead.
Is there anyone that's been sitting out to you on the offense?
Shoot, all the guys. I mean, we got a bunch of guys busting their nuts off to, you know, make plays and do the right thing. So I'm not going to point out one guy in particular. We just got a bunch of dudes out there that are all working towards one common goal. So it's good to see that.
This sounds like it's going to go more so about competition. You want it going all the way into week 1.
Yeah.
Why should you be the number 1 guy? Why should you be the guy?
Shoot. I'm not gonna say why I should be the guy, but I mean, I'm gonna work I'm gonna work my nuts off until week 1 to be that guy, just because that's who I am. I'm a competitor, and no matter if I'm named a starter, you know, 3 weeks ago, or I'm named a starter in week 3, I'm gonna compete just the same and be the same person every day, because that's what I'm called on this earth to do, is just to be the same person every day and glorify God while doing that. So I'm not gonna sit here and worry about outcomes and me being a starter. I'm just gonna do my job every day and, you know, hope for the best, basically.
I ask that because I presume you coming here, the idea that you will compete for this. It's everything is wide open because it's from ground zero.
Yeah, I mean, I came into this knowing I have to compete for it, but, you know, I don't want to be given anything for me, and I don't want to be complacent in the fact that, you know, I'm coming here to be the guy. There's no competition. Like, you know, competition brings the best out, and it should bring the best out of anybody, especially me. I love competition. You know, it just heightens everything where I'm like, you know, you get nerves, and you're like, man, I got to compete. I got to go out and win the job today. So I like that fact.
Appreciate Haas for the time. I know there was some background noise there. There was a lot happening. It was junior day, so you had a lot of friends and family and all kinds of people around the interviews. But interesting perspective there from Haas, you know, made it clear that he didn't come in assuming he would be the starter. He knew he would have to compete against Kason and these other guys to secure the gig. Seems like he is very much content and comfortable in this position, as is Kason, which is good. Sometimes feelings can get involved when it comes to a QB competition. Seems like those guys have the right mindset. We're running out of time, but I did want to get you guys some perspective from the defense as well. Kenyon Aggers is someone who has popped during his last couple of years on the field. I think he has a chance to really break out this year, be an impactful pass rusher for CSU. So here's a couple of minutes of him answering some questions as well.
When you think about it, a lot of it's new this year, but it's your second year working with Tyson and his defense. How are you seeing the fresh faces kind of merge into what you guys were trying to get built last year?
Yeah, so we still carry that same concept of not only bringing around a family, but a brotherhood. And the first thing that I asked Coach Mora was like, how do you carry that culture, from where you're from to, bringing in new guys and establishing that with the guys that have been here. And we've been talking about culture, and that's brotherhood. And we know within that brotherhood, we have a lot of standards, high standards. When we talk about standards, we talk about iron sharpens iron, action over words, stuff like that.
But do you guys feel as a defense you're more comfortable in
as a
Tyson's
defense?
system?
Yes, more comfortable, getting more comfortable every day. Every day is 1% better.
You guys, everything Coach does is good on good, top competition. Just how has that helped you guys grow this spring?
Like, we know we want to compete. Like I said, iron sharpens iron. So within those competitions, we gotta have leaders, on the defense to lead one another. Especially the freshmen coming in, we gotta set an example for them coming in, for competition. When fall camp comes around, it's gonna be, a long day for us. So,
what do you like about the defense? What excites you about the defense?
I really love the way we blitz the passer. I really love the defense coming off the edge, setting the edge. I really love that.
Has anybody surprised you this spring or kind of stood out to you?
This spring, who surprised me? I'll probably say BK, Brandon Kelly. Him coming in, even see him in the weight room, not just on the field. Like, he's a monster. So, yeah.
What's something you want to get out of spring?
Out of spring football, I want to work on my leadership. Coming out of spring, I want to know that I set that standard or that example for incoming freshmen.
It's good.
I'd appreciate Kenyon, appreciate Haas, appreciate CSU for the access, as well as the staff for allowing us to watch these practices in their entirety. There are a lot of coaches across the country who think they're curing cancer or finding the secrets to rocket science, and it's just not. It's not that deep. Before we get out of here, I did want to just briefly talk about Utah State bringing back Carson Templin and Mason Falslev. A lot like CSU, they will retain key pieces. It does sound like Aladdin will hit the portal, which is unsurprising. He's got NBA athleticism. But a guy like Falslev in particular, it's so rare to see a star of his caliber stick around through that much change. This will be his third coach in 4 years, and he never even got a chance to play for the coach that recruited him to Utah State in the first place. So really, he's interacted with 4 coaches in a 5-year span. For him to stick around after having the successful year that he had, I think that speaks to his character. I think it's cool that having a lasting legacy at Utah State, being a local kid and sticking around matters to him. Seeing Templin stick around is cool too. I honestly root for retention when it comes to all of these programs, because it's just more fun for the conference when those players are coming back year to year instead of, seeing Donovan Dent go play for UCLA, or even like Lamont Butler, seeing him transfer up felt so weird. I like when guys stick around, like a Rashawn Bemba, he'll stick around for his 4th season. It's becoming rarer and rarer these days when it actually happens. I want to show those guys a little bit of love. We should be pretty regularly on this Tuesday, Thursday schedule now for the next couple of months. I don't want to promise that it'll stay this way until the regular season, because weird stuff happens. We're working around a lot of beats and moving parts, and we've got the playoffs, and now the Rockies are in session, and Christian has been my producer, and he's going to be busy with that. So we've got a lot of stuff we've got to work around, but should be pretty consistent on this Tuesday, Thursday at 11 schedule for the majority of the off season. We'll get back to Monday, Friday once fall camp and football season rolls around. Thank you guys so much, though, for listening to the show, for continuing to show love. Got a lot of people that tweeted at the DNVR Rams account, giving props and showing love for having this information, and being accurate. And I know that the show's not for everyone, but I will just say this, man, support your local sources. Even if I'm not the guy for you, support Kevin Lytle, because I promise you we're busting our tails off. And we're more locked in on these beats than any of those national accounts that you're going to follow. That's just the cold, hard truth. But none of this happens without your guys' support, and I know that. I'm eternally thankful for that. Thank you for listening to the DNVR Rams podcast presented by Branded Bills. Head to brandedbills.com. Use that code BBDNVR for 15% off of your first order. Much love, y'all. We are always proud to be. Peace.
We all silly like the mayor. We all silly like the mayor.